Hi everybody, my name is Joe Hughes and today I'm here to talk to you about sky replacement. Now today we're going to be using After Effects to add some planets to our background sky. A couple things I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this. I recommend that you start out with a locked off shot, keep your camera on a tripod. If it's a moving shot, you're going to have to track a lot of the footage that you're using. For the sake of a simple example, a locked off shot, camera, tripod, no movement. But if you wanted to implement the same effect with movement, you're going to have to track your footage. Also, make sure your shot doesn't have any overhead power lines or trees. Now this is advice that I myself didn't realize when I was making this. Make sure there are no overhead objects that can cause you problems later. Next, you're going to want to go into Google and figure out which assets you're going to be using. You're going to want a background sky layer, so any type of JPEG of a clear blue sky or a cloudy day, as well as any assets you plan on using in that background sky. In this case, I'm going to be using planets, so if you looked up alien planets, there are all the assets that you need right there. Now jumping into After Effects, I'm going to show you the before and the after. This is the effect that we're going for, and this is our base footage. You can ignore this layer. This is just a mailbox layer I use to cover up my address. I recommend you do the same, but it isn't going to affect your final product. Now first off, we're going to hit Control D on Windows, Command D on Mac, and we're going to duplicate our footage 3 times. The bottom layer we're going to name Base. Middle layer we are going to name Blend, and we're going to name the top one Sky. Now we can turn off Blend for now because we're not going to need it right away. And in our effects panel, we're going to search up Color Range. This is the effect that we're going to be using. We're going to put it on our sky layer in order to replace our sky with something that looks a little bit more fantastic. Now you're going to click on your eyedropper tool, and you're going to start clicking on your sky. Now if we deactivate our base layer, we can see that we're starting to create a bit of a checkered pattern, which is what we want. We want to try and get as much of the sky covered as we can. This doesn't look bad, but I'm going to adjust the fuzziness to 40% to really make sure that we get everything that we need to. Now we're getting some similar looking patterns on the ground, which we don't want. We only want this to affect the sky. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate our base layer, and we're going to mask out the areas that we don't want affected by this. So just create a rough mask. Around me, around the trees. Pretty much just don't want the sky. Go around the mailbox. And then we might end up feathering that later, but right now that looks good to me. So if we turn our base layer on and off, we can see that now the ground isn't being affected by it, which is what we want. So now we're going to go into our images here, and we're going to drag in our sky layer, which is going to be this blue sky JPEG. I'm going to put that under our base layer. Then we're going to scale up until it completely fills up our screen. Next, we're going to drag in our alien planet, which you can pretty much put anything in your sky. We happen to be using planets just because that is what I wanted to use today, but you can really do it with anything. So we're going to drag our planet into place. And then we're getting these borders, which we don't want, so we're going to mask out our sky there. Just get the planet itself. We're going to mask out our planet. We're going to hit F to feather, just ever so slightly. We can kind of adjust it as needed. The more planets we want to put in, we can just hit Control D again and duplicate as many planets as we want. I'm going to resize this one. Medium. Gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna scale down to create a smaller planet there. But I'm getting my layers all confused, which is why it's a good idea to label everything. So we're gonna make, since this is our large planet, we're gonna make this We're gonna rename this to large planet. Medium planet. And small planet. Wow, I cannot type today. Now we're getting there, but now we want to try and reintroduce some of the cloud elements that'll really sell the effect. Now in order to reintroduce the clouds, we're going to reactivate our blend layer, which are going to make our planets disappear temporarily. We're going to hit T, which is going to open up our opacity, and then we're going to change our opacity to 70. So now we reintroduced some of these clouds. We've cleaned up some of the edges on the branches. I don't know if you can see those. I definitely want to bring a bit more of the branches back, so I'm going to go into Sky, go into the effects controls for Sky, and then I'm just going to start playing around with these values. One of them is going to control how much of the branches we let in, and you can kind of adjust to taste. This is one of the reasons why I don't recommend filming near overhead branches or poles, because you're going to get that weird keying issue. And I haven't gotten exactly how I want it, but you kind of get the idea. Also, now that I'm looking at it, we can go into our blue sky effects, go down to color correction, and then curves. We're going to go into the blue value, and we're going to bring it up slightly so it looks a bit more natural. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. So now going into our blend mode, we're going to get ourselves a rectangular mask, and we're just going to drag it across here. We're going to hit F to feather. It looks a bit more natural. And one of the things you can really do to sell this effect more is you can see that I was filming on a cloudy day, but there were still areas where you could see through the clouds to the blue. If these clouds were directly in front of this planet, then when the clouds dissipated, we would be able to see the planets a bit better. So we're going to select our blend layer, and we're just going to create, after it saves, we're going to create a little mask here, there, and everywhere, wherever we see that a bit of the sky is coming through. And then we're going to change those masks to subtract, and then feather all of them to taste. So now it looks a lot better. Now it looks like we're getting bits of the planet, that there are these layers of clouds and vapor that are creating this effect. And these planets, we can tell that they're a bit farther away because they are smaller, because they are further away. It messes with our perspective a bit. But for the bigger planet, I think that's a good idea. Just scroll through and see that there's certain areas where clouds dissipate. And while we're at it, to further differentiate between these planets, we're going to change the color. So we're going to go back into effects, we're going to go into curves, and we're just going to start playing around with the colors of this. Maybe I want this to be a bit on the yellow side, so I'm going to mess around with that. And then for our medium planet, let's make it radically different. Let's make it like a pink or a blue or something. Go into our blue. Maybe bring out some of the red as well. And then bring down the green. So now it's a purple planet. And we do the same thing for our small planet. I'm gonna make this kind of bluer. So now we have planets of 3 different colors, 3 different shapes. Really helps build out this galaxy that we're creating. So now that everything is pretty much in the place that I want to do it, I want to try and clean up this key a bit more. So if you go into Sky, you can start messing around with these values and get different levels of clarity. We want to try and avoid creating this sort of boxy area over here. So we're going to go into our base layer. We're going to feather that mask a bit more. And I think I'm seeing a bit on Mr. Squirrel here that I don't want, so I'm going to move that up. Again, You can make this look a lot better if you really take the time to mask things out properly. I kind of rushed it, so I'm going to just rely on feathering to get me there. Excuse me while I play around a bit to try and get more of these trees back. So after playing around with it, I messed around with some of these values. This is kind of where I ended up. If I play through, trees are swaying, doesn't look like we're getting any weird edging. If I'm wrong, please tell me, but so far that looks pretty good to me. And that's essentially how I did it. That's how I managed to put planets in the sky in the background, and I'm sure this could be done better if I were to spend more time on it. I think my first round actually came out better than my second, but that's how I was able to do sky replacement. So this ended up being our final result, guys. I like how it turned out. I'm sure if I played around with it for more than 20 minutes, I can get something that looks even better, but if you wanted to utilize this for some type of sci-fi or fantasy-based projects, I hope you can see now the possibilities related to something like that. But yeah, if you guys end up creating anything using this idea, please send it my way. I'd love to see the results of what would happen if someone were to play around with this and take it in a completely different direction. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope sky replacement becomes your new favorite thing. Take it easy.